My name is Dr. Eleanor Grace, a clinical psychologist with over 40 years of experience working with older adults. I've spent decades studying the intricate dynamics of long-term relationships, especially marriages, and how they evolve over time. Now, as I stand at the intersection of my own life's journey and the many couples I've counseled, I realize just how much we, as women, change as we grow older and how much those changes impact our relationships. It's not just about the aging process, but about the complex web of emotions, unmet desires, and shifting priorities that accompany the passing years. When I began my career, I was eager to help couples navigate the struggles of communication and intimacy. But as I aged, I began to experience these challenges firsthand, and it gave me a new perspective, one that changed the way I view the evolving nature of love and partnership. For most of my life, my career was my anchor. But as my children grew older, I found myself facing a new reality, an emptier home, a quieter life, and a lot of time to reflect on the choices I'd made. Suddenly, my role as a mother and a wife no longer defined me in the same way. My emotional landscape began shifting, and I noticed it in the couples I worked with too. Women, especially, would speak to me about a deep longing for something more, something beyond the roles they had played for so many years. The intimacy in their marriages had faded, the connection felt strained, and they were left wondering, what comes next? Today, I'm sharing with you what I've learned, both from years of research and my own personal experience. As we grow, our needs, our desires, and our expectations change, and so should our relationships. It's time to take a closer look at how we can continue to nurture and evolve these bonds, especially as we reach the later stages of life. After all, our emotional needs don't stop evolving just because we do. Join me as we explore the complex, beautiful, and sometimes painful evolution of long-term relationships, with a focus on understanding the deep changes that women experience as they age and how those changes impact the love they share with their partners. As I sit here today, reflecting on the journey of countless couples I've worked with, I can't help but think of the times when I sat across from women, many of them just like me, who were quietly struggling with a deep sense of disconnection in their marriages. Over the years, I've heard the same sentiments echo time and time again. I don't feel like I know him anymore. Or, we've grown so far apart, I don't know if I still love him the way I used to. And I get it. I've lived it. Time has a way of slipping past us unnoticed, and before you know it, the person you're sitting next to the person you've shared your life with becomes a stranger in some ways. The woman I was in my 30s, so full of energy, ambition, and dreams, is not the woman I am now, and neither is my husband the same man he was all those years ago. The changes are subtle at first, but over time, they become impossible to ignore. In the beginning, our relationship was built on shared experiences, late-night talks, and a deep connection that seemed unshakable. But as time went on, things shifted. Responsibilities, jobs, kids, household chores started taking precedence over the little moments that once made our bond so special. We became more like business partners than soulmates, focused on managing life rather than experiencing it together. As the years passed, I found myself yearning for something deeper, something more fulfilling. And I saw the same thing happening with many of the women I counseled. This wasn't about falling out of love, though. Far from it. It was about evolving, about realizing that as I changed, so too did my emotional needs and desires. I no longer wanted to merely exist alongside my husband. I wanted to feel truly seen, heard, and understood. I wanted to reconnect with the woman I had once been, The woman who had passions, dreams, and a sense of individuality outside of motherhood and marriage. It's a strange thing, growing older, isn't it? You reach a point where you can no longer ignore the quiet whisper inside that asks, "Is this all there is?" The changes I was experiencing emotionally weren't just about physical aging or external circumstances. They were about my own growth, my own desire for more from myself, more from my marriage, and more from life. And most importantly, I realized that I wasn't alone in this journey. When I shared these feelings with others, women in their 50s and 60s, women who had spent decades raising children or supporting their husbands, what surprised me was the overwhelming sense of recognition. We all felt the same things: the overwhelming sense of loss, of disconnect, the yearning for more. And here's the thing: those feelings aren't something to be ashamed of. They are a normal part of our evolution as women and as partners. When we face these feelings, it's not a sign that our marriages are failing. It's simply a sign that we are growing, evolving, and that our relationships must grow with us. So, if you're watching this right now and you feel like you're losing your connection with your partner, or that the love you once shared feels faded, please know that you are not alone. The changes you're experiencing are not only normal, they're essential. We all go through them, and with patience, self awareness, and a willingness to grow, we can navigate these transitions in a way that leads to a stronger, deeper bond than we ever thought possible. Reflecting on my own experience and those of the women I've worked with over the years, I can't help but notice how many of us, myself included, carry an invisible load. It's a weight that often goes unnoticed by the outside world, but it weighs heavily on our hearts and minds every single day. The demands of motherhood, managing a home, taking care of our families, and, for many of us, holding down a job, all of this can be overwhelming. Yet, it's the emotional weight of these responsibilities that is perhaps the hardest to bear. For so many years, I found myself wrapped up in what felt like an endless cycle of housework, children's activities, grocery shopping, and laundry. While I loved my family and wanted the best for them, there were times when I felt like I was drowning. In those moments, I couldn't help but feel like I was giving so much of myself, my time, my energy, my very essence to the needs of others, and yet there was little in return. I rarely received acknowledgement for all that I did. In fact, more often than not, I felt like I was expected to just keep going without a word of thanks or support. It's not just the day-to-day tasks that weigh us down. Many women, especially as they age, also find themselves burdened by financial responsibilities. For some, there is the challenge of managing household expenses, saving for retirement, or perhaps dealing with unexpected medical bills. I've counseled countless women who felt the strain of being the primary financial providers while juggling all the other roles they play in their homes. It's a heavy burden that often goes unnoticed by their partners, creating an emotional distance between them. As I look back on my own journey, I realize how much of my life was defined by my role as a mother, a wife, and a caretaker. But with the passage of time, I began to feel a shift. My children were growing up, becoming more independent, and I started to wonder, who was I outside of these roles? What was left of me once the house was quiet, once the children were no longer underfoot? It was in those quiet moments of reflection that I started to recognize the changes in myself. I was no longer the young woman who had devoted every waking hour to others. The years of being a mother, a wife, and a caretaker had shaped me, yes, but they had also overshadowed my own personal growth. For so long, I had defined myself through my family and my responsibilities. But now, As I stood at this crossroads in my life, I realized that I needed to redefine who I was. I needed to reconnect with the woman I had once been, the woman who had dreams, passions, and goals of her own. And this journey of rediscovery wasn't just about me, it was also about my marriage. I began to notice that my husband, too, had changed over the years. Just like me, he had become so wrapped up in his own responsibilities that we had both lost sight of the connection we once shared. We were no longer the adventurous, curious couple we had been in our younger years. We had become comfortable, complacent, and, in many ways, disconnected. It was painful to admit, but it was also necessary. The realization that we had neglected our relationship for so long was a wake-up call for both of us. This realization wasn't just about a change in roles. It was about redefining what it meant to be a woman in her later years. It was about embracing the idea that, just as we had nurtured and cared for others, we also had the right to nurture and care for ourselves. This wasn't selfishness, it was self-preservation. And it was this process of rediscovery, of shedding the weight of old roles and responsibilities that would ultimately allow us to reconnect, not only with ourselves, but with each other. If you are watching this and find yourself feeling lost in your responsibilities, or like you're carrying a burden that no one else seems to notice, know that you're not alone. The journey of rediscovery is not easy, but it is worth it. Embrace this change. It's your time to evolve, to grow, and to redefine what happiness and fulfillment look like, both for yourself and in your relationships. As I sit across from the women who come to me for guidance, I can't help but notice the underlying theme that connects us all, this sense of emotional and physical disconnection. Over the years, I've heard countless stories from women who, like me, once felt a deep sense of intimacy and connection with their husbands. But somewhere along the way, that closeness began to slip through our fingers. It wasn't a dramatic shift, it was more like the gradual erosion of a foundation we had once built so carefully together. In my own relationship, I began to feel the absence of something that had once been so natural and comforting: sexual intimacy. At first, I couldn't pinpoint exactly when it started to fade. It wasn't that my husband had changed, it was more that both of us had shifted in ways we hadn't anticipated. As our lives became busier, as the years piled on and our bodies changed, we found ourselves less physically connected. And this wasn't just about sex, it was about the subtle intimacy that comes with touch, affection, and the feeling of being desired. The emotional distance that began to grow was, in many ways, more painful than the physical one. As women age, their bodies undergo changes that can make them feel less desirable. I've often spoken with women who struggle with the loss of youthful energy, the appearance of wrinkles, weight changes, and the inevitable signs of aging. I know this from my own experience. It's a quiet, almost insidious feeling that creeps in, a growing sense that you are no longer the person your partner once found irresistible. You begin to wonder if they still see you the same way. But the loss of intimacy in marriage goes beyond just the physical. It often reflects a deeper emotional disconnection. When intimacy fades, so does the closeness. And as much as we try to fill that gap with words, with the care of our families, with everything that we do for others, there's an underlying emptiness that no task or responsibility can fill. It's the quiet loneliness that comes when you realize that the person who once was your partner in everything has become more of a roommate than a lover. This isn't a rare experience. In fact, many women in long-term relationships find themselves in similar situations, feeling disconnected, lonely, and sometimes even invisible in their marriages. And I have to admit that loneliness can be crushing. we begin to feel like we've given so much of ourselves to others, our families, our children, even our work, that we no longer have the energy or the desire for the one person we should feel most connected to, our partner. It's easy to feel isolated in these moments, especially when the world around us continues to celebrate youth, beauty, and vitality. But here's the truth. These feelings of insecurity and disconnection are not unique to any one person, they are universal. If you're watching this and feeling like your intimacy with your partner has faded, or that you're no longer seen in the way you once were, know that you are not alone. These are the challenges that come with the passage of time, and they are part of the journey we all walk. But what I've learned, both from my own experiences and from the countless women I've worked with, is that we don't have to stay stuck in this place. There is always an opportunity for reconnection, for rediscovering ourselves and our relationships. It might not happen overnight, but it's a process, one that requires vulnerability, communication, and a willingness to be seen for who we truly are in all our complexity. So, to all the women out there who feel like they're struggling with this loss of connection, I want to say, it's okay to acknowledge it. It's okay to grieve the changes in your body, your relationship, and your intimacy. But it's also okay to look for ways to rebuild, to reignite the spark that may have dimmed over time. It's your story, your life, and it's never too late to make the changes that will bring you closer to the person you once were and to the person you're becoming. As I sit back and reflect on the years of both my personal journey and the countless stories shared with me, one thing becomes undeniably clear. Unresolved conflicts and a lack of communication can create a deep, almost invisible rift between partners. In my work as a psychologist, I have seen time and again how seemingly small issues, left unaddressed, accumulate and transform into major obstacles in relationships. It's like a slow-moving avalanche where every little disagreement, every unspoken frustration, eventually contributes to a mountain of unresolved tension. And when that tension is left unchecked, it can break down even the most solid connections. I remember one particular couple I worked with, Mary and James, both in their early 60s, having been married for almost 40 years. They came to me seeking help, but when I asked them about their relationship, I noticed something that was all too familiar. They didn't know how to talk to each other anymore. The small problems they had Mary feeling overburdened with household responsibilities, and James feeling unappreciated in his efforts, had quietly built a wall between them. And over the years, instead of addressing those issues, they had simply grown accustomed to the silence. Mary would often talk to me about how she felt like she had to take on everything, raising the kids, managing the house, and making sure everything ran smoothly. She had given so much of herself for so long, but James hadn't recognized how exhausted she was. He, in turn, would tell me how he felt like he was constantly overlooked, how his attempts to help were dismissed. This cycle of silent frustration, these little resentments, piled up over time and created an emotional distance so vast that it felt impossible to bridge. What struck me the most was their reluctance to confront the deeper issues, those hard conversations about unmet expectations, unspoken needs, and the quiet resentment that had been allowed to simmer for so long. As I spoke with them individually, I could see that they both loved each other deeply, but neither of them knew how to break the silence that had taken root in their marriage. And the worst part was that they had both stopped believing it was even possible to change things. It's a truth that many of us don't want to admit, but it's something I've witnessed time and time again. When we avoid the difficult conversations, when we let small irritations grow unchecked, they eventually lead to emotional disconnect. And that disconnect over time becomes harder to repair. The reality is that these issues are not rare, they are deeply human. We all face moments in our relationships where we feel unheard, where our needs go unmet, and where we don't know how to voice our frustrations without feeling like we're being a burden. This is where many of us find ourselves, at the crossroads of vulnerability and fear, unsure of how to approach our partners without feeling judged or rejected. But what I want you to understand from my own experience and the experiences I've heard is that these challenges are not something to be ashamed of. They are a normal part of being in a long-term relationship. The key is not to bury them, not to let them fester and become something insurmountable. The key is communication, honest, vulnerable, and sometimes uncomfortable communication. If you're watching this and finding yourself in a similar situation, I want you to know that you are not alone. The struggles you face in your marriage, the silent frustrations, the unspoken needs, they are not signs that something is wrong with you or your relationship. They are part of the human experience. And just because a problem has existed for a long time doesn't mean it can't be solved. The first step is always the hardest, but it's also the most important. Start the conversation, no matter how difficult it may seem. Because, as I've learned through my years of work and from my own journey, true healing begins when we stop pretending everything is fine and start being real with ourselves and with each other. As I continued to work with couples like Mary and James, I often found myself reflecting on a powerful truth that I've seen manifest time and time again in my career. The process of personal growth and self-discovery doesn't end with marriage, children, or even the passing of time. For many women, the journey towards self-awareness intensifies as they reach certain milestones in life, one of the most pivotal being when their children grow up and leave home. I remember Mary, in particular, expressing a deep sense of loss when her youngest daughter moved out. It wasn't just the empty nest that troubled her, it was the sudden realization that she didn't know who she was anymore. For so many years, she had dedicated herself entirely to her role as a mother, wife, and caretaker. She had poured her energy into others, and in the process, her own dreams, desires, and aspirations had taken a back seat. Now, with her children no longer needing her in the same way, Mary found herself standing at a crossroads, uncertain of where to go next. This moment of transition, while deeply unsettling, is one that many women experience as they move into this new phase of life. The truth is, as we age and as our circumstances change, our identities shift too. When the daily routine of motherhood fades into the background, we're left with the question, who are we, really? What do we want? What dreams have we put on hold that deserve to be brought back into the light? For Mary, this realization was both terrifying and liberating. She felt like she had spent so much time being everything to everyone else's daughter, wife, mother, that she had forgotten to be herself. But now, with a new sense of space and freedom, she felt an intense urge to reconnect with the passions she had left behind. She wanted to return to painting, something she loved doing in her youth. She dreamed of taking a trip to Italy, a place she had always longed to visit. But most importantly, she wanted to explore who she was beyond the role she had been playing for decades. This desire for personal growth and reinvention, I told her, is a natural and beautiful part of life. It's a signal that you are stepping into a new chapter, one where you can finally listen to your own voice. And while it's normal to feel uncertain or even guilty about focusing on yourself after years of caring for others, it's essential to remember that you cannot pour from an empty cup. You need to fill yourself up first. rediscover your passions, and invest in your own happiness. Only then can you truly show up for the people you love. As I spoke with Mary, I could see the spark of possibility in her eyes. The shift in her mindset was palpable. She began to realize that it wasn't too late to redefine who she was. In fact, this was the perfect time for her to embrace the woman she was becoming, not just the woman she had been. And this is a message I want to share with all of you watching today. No matter where you are in life, no matter your age or circumstances, it is never too late to rediscover yourself. Your goals, your dreams, and your needs are just as important as those of the people you love. The journey of self-awareness and personal growth is one that doesn't have to end with any particular stage of life. It's a lifelong process full of possibilities. Like Mary, you too have the power to embrace change, to redefine your path, and to discover a new version of Yo. As I sat across from Mary, I noticed something that had changed in her demeanor. For the first time in months, she looked lighter, more hopeful, but there was still something weighing her down. It wasn't the painting or the trip to Italy. She had dreamed about it was something more personal. She hesitated before she spoke, her eyes darting nervously to the ground. I've been thinking a lot about how I've changed. Physically, Mary began, her voice tinged with vulnerability. I'm not the same woman I was in my 20s or even my 30s. I don't feel as confident as I used to, and I can't shake this feeling that James doesn't see me the way he once did. I don't even feel attractive to him anymore. Her words hit me with a quiet intensity. I had heard similar concerns from many women over the years, this deep-rooted fear of not being enough, not being desired. As we age, our bodies inevitably change. Wrinkles appear, hair may thin or gray, and our shape may shift in ways we hadn't anticipated. These physical changes can make women feel as if they're losing a part of themselves, the part that once commanded attention and admiration. I could see that Mary had started to feel the weight of these changes. She had noticed the way James no longer commented on her appearance as he had when they were first married. The affectionate gestures, the compliments, those small tokens of love that had once made her feel special, had become fewer and farther between. And with each passing day, her sense of self-worth began to erode, as if her value was tied solely to how she looked. I gently reminded her that these feelings were not unique to her. It's a common experience for many women as they enter their later years. Physical attractiveness, especially in a culture that so often defines beauty by youth, can feel like a fleeting thing. And when the outward signs of aging become more noticeable, it's easy to feel invisible, not just to the world, but to the ones we love the most. I understand how you feel, Mary, I said, looking her in the eye. But let me remind you of something. True attractiveness doesn't come from the way you look on the outside. It comes from within, from how you carry yourself, how you love and care for the people around you, and how you take care of your own spirit. James may not express his affection the same way he did when you were younger, but that doesn't mean he doesn't love you. It's just that sometimes we have to see our own beauty before others can see it. Mary took a deep breath, her eyes welling up with emotion. But what if he doesn't look at me the same way? What if I'm just not what he wants anymore? I smiled softly. Sometimes it's not about looking like you did when you were younger. It's about remembering the connection you've built with each other, the history, the shared experiences, and the way you make each other feel. You're not just the woman you were, you're also the woman you are becoming. And as you rediscover your passions, as you reclaim parts of yourself that may have been dormant for years, your attractiveness will shine through again, not because of the way you look, but because of the way you love yourself. As I spoke, I could see Mary's shoulders relax, her expression softening. For the first time in a long while, she was starting to believe in her own worth again. It wasn't about the mirror anymore. It was about what was reflected in her heart. And that, I knew, would make all the difference in her relationship with James. And, most importantly, in the way she viewed herself. In that moment, I felt a sense of peace wash over Mary, a sense of acceptance that wasn't dependent on external validation, but on an internal strength that had been there all along, waiting to be rediscovered. As our conversation drifted from physical changes to emotional ones, I could sense that Mary's unease was far from over. She had opened up about her fears of losing physical attraction, but there was something else quietly nagging at her, something deeper, more pressing. It wasn't until she took a long, shaky breath that I realized what it was. "I don't know if I can keep doing this, Susan," Mary said, her voice barely above a whisper. "James and I can never agree on money. I can feel the tension rising every time we talk about finances. We're getting older, and the future's just getting closer, but we can't even talk about it without fighting." Her words hit home. Financial stress is one of the silent killers of relationships, and I could see it was taking its toll on Mary and James. The strain of managing money, especially when it came to their retirement plans and household bills, was creating a rift that was hard to ignore. Mary had always been the one to manage the household budget, balancing the costs of groceries, utilities, and savings. James, on the other hand, preferred to live in the moment, spending on experiences, gadgets, and occasional splurges, often pushing back against Mary's more cautious approach. "I know we have different views, but it's like I'm the one carrying all the weight," Mary continued, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "I'm the one worrying about how we're going to survive when we're older, and he just brushes it off like it's not important. It's not just about the money, it's about trust, and I don't know how to make him see that." I nodded, understanding the weight of her frustration. Financial problems can easily spiral into something much bigger: questions of trust, priorities, and shared responsibility. When one partner feels like they're doing all the heavy lifting, it can breed resentment. And when there's no resolution in sight, it can create an emotional distance that's hard to bridge. "Mary, the first hear you," I said softly. "Money is so much more than just numbers on a page. It's a reflection of values, security, and the way we envision our future together. I know it's hard, but have you tried sitting down with James? Not just to talk about money, but to talk about what that money represents to both of you." Her eyes searched mine, a mixture of hope and doubt. "What do you mean?" "Well, it's not just about the bills and the numbers. It's about your goals for the future. Do you both want to travel? Do you want to be able to retire comfortably? Or is it about enjoying the present moment? If you can get on the same page about the bigger picture, it might be easier to compromise on the details." Financial stress often comes from a mismatch of expectations and fear of the unknown. Mary's face softened, her shoulders relaxing for the first time during our conversation. "I guess I've been so focused on the practical stuff, I haven't really thought about why we're doing this in the first place. Maybe I need to understand his perspective too." "You're right," I said. "And just as important, he needs to understand yours. It's about finding a way to work together, to find a balance that feels right for both of you. It's not about being perfect, but about being partners who support each other through the challenges." Mary nodded slowly, a quiet resolve forming in her eyes. She wasn't sure how it would all play out, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like there was a way forward. The weight of financial tension wasn't going to magically disappear, but perhaps there was a way to share that burden more equally a way to bring her and James closer, not farther apart. As the conversation shifted again, I could sense the deeper, more fragile pieces of Mary's emotions coming to the surface. Her voice softened as she spoke again, this time more hesitantly, but I could tell it was something she'd been carrying for a while. You know, Susan, it's not just the money. I feel like I'm not being seen. It's like I've been doing everything working, keeping the house together, raising the kids, but James, I don't think he even notices. And it's not just that. It's like he doesn't respect me anymore. Like everything I do is just expected, and he doesn't appreciate it. I don't feel like we're equals anymore. I saw the sadness in her eyes, the weight of years spent feeling unseen and unheard. The tears she held back spoke volumes, and for a moment, I could almost feel the years of frustration and unspoken pain between her words. Respect, it's a fundamental need in any relationship, and when it's missing, the emotional distance that follows is often insurmountable. Mary, the first hear you, I said, my voice steady but filled with understanding, that feeling of being taken for granted, of doing everything for the family, and yet feeling invisible, it can erode the core of a relationship. No one wants to feel like they're just another cog in the machine, especially not in a marriage. And when respect is missing, it creates tension that can feel suffocating. You're not just feeling undervalued in terms of your efforts, but also in terms of your individuality. She nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. I could tell that Mary had sacrificed a lot, her time, her energy, her own sense of self, and had done so out of love. But the toll it had taken on her was clear. She wasn't just looking for appreciation, she was looking for validation. She wanted to know that her contributions, her choices, and her identity mattered just as much as James's. I've tried talking to him, Mary continued, her voice shaking now, but it's like he doesn't get it. I'm tired of asking for the same things over and over, and it's exhausting. I don't know how much longer I can keep going like this. I could feel the frustration in her words, the weariness of years of feeling like she was fighting alone for respect and equality in her marriage. Mary, it sounds like you're at a crossroads. You're not asking for much, you're just asking to be seen, to be valued for everything you do and everything you are. You deserve that. Every person deserves that. She looked at me, her eyes searching for hope. But what if he doesn't understand? What if things don't change? There's always room for growth, Mary, I said, offering a gentle but firm reassurance. It starts with open, honest conversations about what respect and equality mean to both of you. It's about finding a balance where both of you feel valued. If you feel like you've been doing the heavy lifting in the relationship, it's important to express that and for him to acknowledge it. It's not about blame, but about partnership. You need to feel like an equal, not just someone fulfilling a role. Mary let out a breath, a flicker of understanding in her eyes. She wasn't sure how it would unfold, but for the first time in a while, I could see a spark of determination. She wasn't just going to accept being invisible anymore. She was ready to be seen, to be heard, and to demand the respect she deserved, both from James and from herself. As the conversation continued, Mary's eyes began to light up with a newfound spark, a quiet fire that had been dormant for so long. I could see the shift in her demeanor as she spoke again, her voice taking on a tone of hope, yet tinged with a hint of uncertainty. You know, Susan, I've been thinking a lot lately, she said, her hands nervously twisting the edge of her sweater. It's like I've spent so many years being the wife, the mother, the caregiver. But what about me? What about my dreams, my desires? I feel like I've been putting everyone else first for so long. And now that the kids are getting older, I'm starting to feel like I want more. I want to travel, try new things, maybe even take up painting or join a class. But when I talked to James about it, he just doesn't get it. I could see the deep conflict in her eyes. On the one hand, there was this undeniable desire for something new, something different, a chance to rediscover herself outside of her roles as a wife and mother. But on the other hand, there was the fear of pushing against the very relationship she had built her life around, the fear that wanting change might create more distance between her and James. "Mary," I said gently, "you're not alone in this. So many women, as they age, start to feel that pull towards something new, something that allows them to grow individually, to experience life outside of the responsibilities they've carried for so long. It's like a second chance, a time to redefine who they are, what they want, and what makes them feel alive again." Her face softened as she nodded, but there was still a sense of hesitation in her expression. But what if he doesn't understand? What if he's not on the same page? I don't want to feel like I'm abandoning him, but I also can't keep ignoring the desire for something more. I leaned in a little closer, my voice filled with empathy. "I understand, Mary. It's a delicate balance, isn't it? Wanting to grow and explore, but not wanting to hurt or distance yourself from the person you've shared your life with. But here's the thing, this isn't about leaving James behind. This is about you finding yourself again. It's about showing him that you're not just his partner, but also an individual with passions, dreams, and needs of your own. If he truly loves you, he'll want to support you in that journey. And if he doesn't, well, that's something you'll need to face together. You deserve to explore, to find joy, and to feel fulfilled. No one should have to choose between their own growth and their relationship." Mary sat in silence for a moment, her gaze distant as she absorbed what I had said. I could see her processing, weighing the possibility of change against the comfort and stability she had known for so long. It was clear that, for Mary, this wasn't just about a personal longing, it was about reclaiming a part of herself that had been buried under years of compromise and caregiving. Finally, she looked up at me, her voice steady but filled with resolve. "Maybe you're right, Susan. Maybe it's time for me to step out of the shadows of everyone else's needs and figure out what I really want for me." I smiled, knowing that for Mary, the journey of self-discovery had only just begun. But it was a journey that would be hers to take, with or without James's understanding. The road ahead was uncertain, but the desire for change and new experiences had already begun to spark a transformation in her heart, and that was the first step toward rediscovering herself. As the conversation with Mary came to a close, I felt the weight of the words we had shared together. Mary, though uncertain, had taken the first step toward acknowledging her need for personal growth and change. Her journey wasn't going to be easy, but it was one she was ready to face with an open heart and a clearer sense of what she truly needed. Turning to the camera, I smiled softly and spoke directly to the viewers, my voice filled with warmth and understanding. You see, Mary's story is one that resonates with so many of us, especially as we reach a certain stage in life. We start to reflect on the paths we've taken, the roles we've played, and the dreams we've put aside for others. And, like Mary, many of us feel that pull toward something more, toward a life that allows us to be more than just the roles we've assumed over the years. It's never too late to reconnect with yourself, to explore new possibilities, or to embrace the change that life brings. But remember, it starts with you. You deserve to have your own dreams, your own happiness. And sometimes that means taking a leap of faith. I paused, letting the message sink in before continuing with a heartfelt call to action. If Mary's story or anything we've discussed today resonates with you, I want to hear from you. Please take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you experienced a similar journey of self-discovery? Or maybe you're feeling stuck, uncertain about what comes next. I'd love to know how you're navigating these changes in your own life. Don't forget to ask any questions or share your personal experiences. This community is here to support each other, and your voice matters. I smiled warmly and leaned slightly forward, inviting the viewers to connect. And if you haven't already, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the Senior Moments Matt channel. Every week, we dive into important topics like this, offering support, wisdom, and real-life stories to help us all thrive in the later stages of life. Thank you for being here today. Your time is precious, and I'm so grateful to be part of this journey with you. With a final, encouraging smile, I gave a soft nod. Remember, you're not alone in this. We're in it together. The video ended with a gentle fade out, leaving viewers with a sense of hope, connection, and a renewed desire to embrace their own journey of self-discovery and growth.